Hi, this is Jill Ayn Schneider, and I'd like to tell you a story about my life. 1975, I was diagnosed with malignant cervical cancer. And the medical doctor wanted me in the hospital the next week. And he figured he could just say that, and I would walk out of the room and I would do whatever he said. But I am a very curious person, and the two tests that had been taken, he said that was conclusively malignant. And I had been studying just maybe for 2 or 3 weeks before I got into a class in the theory of Oriental medicine. And it was very interesting to me because the Chinese theory of cancer is that it's basically an imbalance. And we know that cancer is an inflammatory disease. So it's inflammation in a particular part of the body, and then they call it cancer. Well, I questioned all of that stuff. And I thought, no, I could work on this myself. I could change my diet. I had been a vegetarian, but not a very good one. White flour, white sugar, little dairy products in there. So I got some information from the macrobiotic people. At the time, those were the kind of theories that were going on in that philosophy of macrobiotic, great life. And I'm into having a great long life. So I conferred with Michio Kushi at the time, got some information, got started on a cleanse. And I also started getting some acupuncture and herbs. I was referred by Ralph Allendale at the time. He was not an acupuncturist yet. He went on to become one of the most famous acupuncturists in the United States. And he was teaching a class. He had just come back from China, and he was just teaching a very casual class. It was in a bank building in Coral Gables. And I just happened to see a sign, a flyer somewhere, and I signed up for it. Just happened to do that right before I find out that I have malignant cervical cancer. And anyway, I started the class, and a couple of weeks later got the diagnosis, went and called Dr. Dale and said, can we meet for coffee maybe before the class? And I'd like to discuss something with you. And he said, no problem, fine. And he introduced me eventually in the next few days, to the acupuncturist that he was referring people to, Dr. Felix Marquand. And I started going for acupuncture. I also quit my job, which was very stressful. And I started a cleanse that Michio Kushi of the Kushi Foundation suggested that I do, which was just eating brown rice for 10 days and chewing every bite 50 to 100 times. And I'd be sitting in my little one-room apartment, little studio in Miami, and I would just sit on my little pillows, and I think I was living a bit of a hippie lifestyle in those days. And I just knew that this very simplicity of what I was doing brings me into this awareness of the moment. So on some level, that is probably one of the most important things that you can do for yourself if and when you get any kind of diagnosis, is to come into the moment, use your breath, breathe, be aware of your breath going and coming, and just relax. And I was doing that for 10 days, along with chewing 50 to 100 times each bite full of a little plate, a little bowl of rice. I probably used chopsticks at the time as well. Long story short, I went to the acupuncturist, Dr. Felix Marquand, and he greeted me at the door, and he says, come in, come in, come in. And he just looked at me. We were like 4 or 5 feet apart, and he just looked at me and he said, with the long gray beard. No problem. I fix. And this little heart of mine just, whoa, opened up. And I knew he was telling me the truth. You know, it was just an incredible moment, and I'll never forget it. Because he fixed me. In a month's time, it had already improved. I did, I think, 8 sessions over a period of 1 month, twice a week. And he would take me into his little back office, and he'd make me a cup of tea, or there'd be some soup or a sweet potato. And then he'd give me some herbs, and he'd roll them up and say, here, just eat this. And I would do everything that he said, no problem. I didn't worry about where the herbs were coming from. I trusted him. I trusted the moment. I trusted my life and what created my life. I had already been a meditator for a while, so this was not new to me on some level. So then I decided with a friend I had quit my job, and it was the end of my lease, and I just said, okay, I'm leaving my car in someone's backyard and I'm getting out of Dodge. I got out of Miami and I traveled at first to Caracas, Venezuela. And after that, I spent some time in a jungle near Caracas for a couple of weeks with another friend, and rested, just really rested. I didn't have anything to do but just take care of me. And then I went down to Peru with my friend Mark, and he had relatives, so we would visit a little bit. But then we went, of course, to Machu Picchu, 1975. It was so beautiful. There were no tourists there. It was just the archaeologists that were, in the pits. And there was no place to stay except a flop house where the workers stayed. There were cots in a big room with chickens and goats. And it was not too bad because it was a hot spring. There were no hotels. You had to hitchhike in a truck to get to the top of Machu Picchu. And there were no tours. And there were no tourists. It was a very special time, and I meditated there. We stayed there probably for a few days. And long story short, then we kind of traveled all around Peru, because, there's so much to see there, and there's so many nice people, and stayed in little hostels and stayed in little pensions. And I had a little pot that I brought with me on the trip in my backpack, and I had rice and I had seaweed, and I could get vegetables at the market, and sesame seeds, and really whatever I needed. And after 6 months of this schlepping, I decided it was time to go home. And I went back to Miami, and I went to the doctor, and the cancer was gone. I never thought about it while I was traveling, honestly. Only every once in a while I would ask a shaman, the herbalists that were in the market, and they would look at my eyes, or they would look at my tongue or whatever, and they would just say, here, take this. And they would make a little package of tea that I would take all along my journey. And I'm 75 years old, just turned. And I just hiked all the way 4.5 miles up to 6,200 feet, Rowan Mountain. And not a problem. The body's working really, really well. I take very good care of myself. I'm in the middle of writing my autobiography of a revolutionary healer. It's been quite a life. And within the time frame from when I had cancer in 1975 and until now, I've been able to help a lot of people to make a decision. And the decision was that they were going to just take care of themselves and not have anything really interfere with that. Have that be their intention, have that be their focus. And if you go to my website, which it will be underneath this video, you can read reviews of all the people that I have been able to guide to that place within themselves where the healer lives. We all have that healer inside of us. And it's a beautiful place, and it feels good, and it's real. It doesn't cost anything. I'll even give you a free 20-minute consult to try to get to the root cause of what's going on with you. I really hope you will get in touch with me and set up an appointment. And have a wonderful week. And I hope to meet you in person, if not in person, at least on Zoom or FaceTime or whatever. Enjoy this life. Have no fear. Have no fear. Bye.